Sheryl, our speaker, is a writer and a photographer. I want to spend just a little bit of time telling
Sorry, Lynn, I muted you. You're going to have to unmute yourself. My apologies. I accidentally did that.
unmute. There it is. How long ago was I muted?
I apologize. We didn't hear anything, so you'll have to start again. My apologies.
All right. When the presentation is on, you may want to choose speaker view in the upper right-hand corner because it gives you a much bigger view of the presentation. And with that, I will try again to do an introduction. You know from reading the invitation that our speaker, Sheryl Smith Rodgers, is a writer and a photographer. And I will spend a short amount of time giving you the abridged version of how she got to where she is today. In high school, she was on her newspaper staff from her sophomore year on. She graduated from Trinity University with a degree in print journalism and political science. After that, newspapers, the Onion Creek Free Press, San Marcos Daily Record, the Austin American Statesman, and then the Blanco County News. She moved to Blanco in 2002 and around about this time started doing a lot of freelancing. Her articles, essays, and photographs have been in a number of publications. I counted 20 some and quit counting. It was too many to read. But I thought that 3 of them in particular might relate to most of us. One is Texas Highway Magazine. I'm sure you've all seen that at some time or another. Secondly, Texas Co-op Power. If you have PEC electricity, you get that magazine. And then Texas Parks and Wildlife Magazine. She's had a number of articles in that. And I want to show you this one in particular. This is the May edition. And this article is about her Wildscape backyard. And it has beautiful photos. And she is probably going to address some of these this evening. She has, and by the way, if you don't have this magazine, it's available online. You can check it out. She's received many, many awards for her writing. She has published 2 books, one on camping and cooking and one on Texas restaurants. And she became a master naturalist in 2012 in the Highland Lakes chapter. And in 2017, started writing children's books. And she found that she has a passion for sharing her love for and awe of nature with kids. The one thing that has been conspicuously absent from my introduction is how Sheryl got into wildscaping and how she now has an incredible yard. And I will let her tell you about that. So please join me in welcoming Sheryl Smith Rodgers.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. I guess I'm just singing. Let me see. Anyway, okay. Well, thank you so much for that. I don't see myself. I guess that's what's throwing me off. I'm up there. This is my first Zoom presentation. I've been in on a lot of programs as the audience, but this is my first time to actually give one. So wish me luck. And then I just have to share this. Today, this afternoon, we got news that my daughter is getting married Friday by Zoom. She's having a Zoom wedding in her apartment. So JP's going to marry them. He's going to be on his computer, they're going to be on theirs, and then we're going to be on our computer. So it's just a crazy world right now. Let me get my screen sharing. Let's see. Hang on a minute. Like I said, this is my first time. So screen sharing, play. God, how do I get rid of that? Oh, heck. See, now you got to bear with me. I told y'all.
Okay, Sheryl, take your time. Take your time.
Okay. Okay, because see, my mouse is now not working like I told you. So I cannot. There we go. Okay. I have to escape and then play. Okay. So can y'all see? Since I don't have me on there, do y'all see? What do y'all
do, Sheryl. We
Yes,
got
we see
you,
you.
but we don't have your presentation yet.
Okay. So did I not share screen? Okay. Share screen.
And there's
share.
one, there you go. Now we've got
Okay.
it.
Okay, so now when I hit play, okay. Okay, so there we are. So Lynn, thank you for the wonderful.
And Sheryl, I apologize. You may want to put it in presentation mode, or maybe it's just a little bit slow. I don't know. There you go. That's it right there.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to thank Lynn for the wonderful, wow, you did your research. There's just one correction. I've been in Blanco since 1989, and that's about the time I started really freelancing. So that's half my life I've lived in this town because I just turned 61. So anyway, so yeah, I'm going to talk today about Window on a Texas Wildscape. And like I said, she gave you a wonderful background on me. I've been a master naturalist since 2012. And then they told me too that there's a pause. So I just hit the button, and so y'all see this now. It's like a 3 second, is that right? About a 3 second pause when I move my slides. Do you see my husband and I?
Yes,
okay.
we do.
Okay, so we got married in 2006. So he's my partner in crime in all of this. And so the next year, we started, a little bit of work on the yard, and I was doing more magazine articles back then. I was doing a lot of research, and I came across this program on the internet called Texas Wildscapes. And I told James, I said, I think we might qualify. I'll go ahead and, put in an application. What do you think? And he said, yeah. And so, $15 and sent in the application, and we were accepted. It's like, wow, that was easy. And so then the next year I started my blog, and I started it mainly as a gardening journal instead of trying to keep a notebook of when I planted this or this happened, at this time of year or whatever. I just decided to start this blog, and it's turned into a wonderful tool because I use it kind of as a gardening journal, but then it's kind of morphed into I share what I learn in the yard and what I see, and I just all kinds of different things. And then I can search it too when I need to for information or when something happened. And so can you tell me, do you see the next slide? Is it still about 3 seconds? So we had this big yard.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, I don't want to do it too fast. So when my daughter and I moved into this house here in Blanco on 9th Street, so we're in town. This is kind of the front yard, what it looked like, and I was so proud of myself because if you see the zinnias over there, I planted the zinnias, and I had gone in and pulled out all the honeysuckle and the Japanese honeysuckle and greenbrier and put rocks around the crepe myrtle that was already there. Like, wow, look at me. That was before I, married James. And so, fast forward 10 years. And so we've done a whole lot of work. And this is kind of what it looks like now, even though this was 4 years ago. That's the front yard. The backyard was mainly grass, which I didn't do anything to, just kind of kept it mowed as best I could as a single mom. That's one side of the yard. The house sits on 2 lots, so that's kind of what it looks like now 3 years ago. And then looking the other direction, this is what the yard looked like. I had 1 bird bath, the washing machine drainage tube, emptied out in that fairy circle out there. And so we had the hose disconnected and put the water into the, the white water into the sewage system. And, you can just see what we've done over the years. And the meadow next door, we were able to purchase that vacant lot in 2008. And I told James, I said, can we put a sign up, kind of like a state park sign, and let people know that it's not just a vacant lot. And he liked that idea. And I found one online and ordered it. And that's really worked out nice, kind of get the word out, what we're doing. So these are some of the programs that we've certified, that we've been certified in. Everybody hearing me okay? So then in 2012,
We're hearing you just fine, Sheryl.
Okay, good. So I went to my first Master Naturalist Conference. If anybody's been with the naturalist, you might remember Mark. And he came after the conference, and because I said, you need to come see our place, and maybe we could be a demonstration site. And he had a sign in his car. So we put it up, a few days later after he gave it to us. It's in the front yard. So basically, what's a wildscape? Sadly, right now, the program is on hiatus because they don't have staffing, and then I'm sure the current situation has kind of made things harder as well. But basically, if and when the program comes back, you need at least 50% natives, Texas natives, and then you need to provide food, water, and shelter year-round. But so anybody can do it. You don't have to be certified. But for us, we have not, the money that we've put into the yard has mostly been in plants. We did purchase two, that looks like maybe the year 2008. We're both pretty young. Looks like 2 truckloads of dirt. So we did buy that. And then we've accumulated rocks, through the years from our property outside of town and here and there. So that's what we've used for the beds. Mulch, we don't purchase mulch. We get it through Pernalis, PEC Electric Co-op. I don't know if you guys know that, but you can get on their list and they will deliver mulch to you for free, if they're in your area. So if you're interested in that, call and get on their list. That's probably, I guess we've had about 3 loads now over the years. We have a great big amount of it right now. So plants, I grew up in Corpus Christi. Those are my parents, and we had wax ligustrums, and there's pittosporums, and I guess my mother did plant some zinnias there. But, Chinese tallow and China berries, that was what, people planted back then. Boy, I hated it because Dad would cut those shrubs, and then we had to haul off the cuttings. And then, of course, and I'm talking to native plant people, so I don't really need to spend any time on this, but here's some, the ones that you don't really want to, you don't want to plant them. Some of the very first native plants that we added, you can see, and you probably are very familiar with these species. But then, as I began to pay more attention to what was already here, like in our meadow, we had a Texas redbud that was pretty small at the time, and now it's almost as tall as the live oak out there. Of course, everybody has these wild violet ruelas, and we had twist leaf yucca, and of course a mountain laurel. But even the smaller plants, I've discovered so many cool species, like just in the meadow and in the yard. And I love sensitive briar. That's what my first chapter book that I wrote for kids was about, a magic plant that my main character finds on the playground. The native plants that we have come from native plant sales. Y'all know about the Wildflower Center, and I think y'all probably have one. I enjoy going to the one in Kendall County, the Nearly Native Plant Sale in April. And of course, y'all know about the 2 native plant nurseries in Medina. We've gotten a lot of plants from David Winningham and then the other gentleman there in town. In this picture here, what I'm holding my hands around is our Blanco crabapple, and that was my birthday present. That's what I wanted that year. But then I got a whole lot of others too, other plants. I made a haul. Here's a whole lot of the other species that we've planted through the years. And I've tried now to plant, because there's Texas native plants, and then there's native plants that are indigenous to your area and region. And those are the ones, of course, that you really should plant. But we have a lot of everything. So like I mentioned, here's our crabapple that we planted in 2013. And I'm working on an article right now about this species. And come to find out that the crabapples that he germinates from seed, Mr. Winningham out there, he sells them at 3 years old. So then our crabapple, which is doing really well in the backyard, it's 10 years old. So it's not really just 7, it's 10 years old. I hadn't thought about that. We do have a Texas padrone that was gifted to us by Mr. Prokhorov. He's got his nursery west of Dripping Springs. I did a magazine article on him, and he wanted to give us one for our backyard, and he came over and selected the site and told James what to do, you know, how to prepare the site for his baby. And so I send him updates occasionally on his baby madrone tree, and he's always excited to see how she's doing. He loves madrones. He built his house in a certain place on his land just for the benefit, so it wouldn't disturb the madrone trees. He's an interesting person. So, you know, the whole thing for me, it's not just about, I'm looking out my window when I turn like this, it's not just about native plants, but it's the wildlife and that it benefits. And that's the other benefit, the fun part of having native plants. Some of the species that have shown up through the huge live oaks in our front yard. One year we had a rufus that stayed with us off and on. And spiders, I don't know if you know me. If you knew me really well, you'd know that spiders are my #1 passion. I do have a presentation on that as well. For a time, I was sending observations of ladybugs to the Lost Ladybug Project that's sponsored through Cornell University. And I've documented 9 species in our yard, 9 different ladybug species. So iNaturalist, I don't know how many of y'all, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with iNaturalist. It's such a wonderful tool, and my goal is to reach 1,000 species in our yard and on our property here in town by the end of the year, and I'm up to 983. I'm really excited about that, and it's not just insects and birds and lizards, but I also document observations of plants, and so I do not take observations, and that means, you know, documenting a plant that we have planted. So, you know, we've planted the persimmon tree out there and Turk's cap, so I don't count those as part of my 983 species. So that would be cheating. But anyway, so it's also a good way to keep a species list of what's in your yard. So if you wanted to, you could just do plants. You wouldn't have to do insects and birds and lizards and all that. But as you can see, I've documented 175 different plants in our yard. And of course, some of them, I think probably ligustrum is probably in that list because it does occur in our yard. But we've pulled out, you know, all that grow in our yard, but there's some on the parameters. So host plants, milkweeds, of course. We have antelope horns in the meadow, and I'm trying to, you know, boost those numbers. By this year, I got, and this is on my blog, I got organza bags, gift bags, and put them over the pods and tied them. So that way, when they busted open, the milkweed bugs wouldn't get in there and start eating the seeds. So I had a very successful year in harvesting a lot of antelope horn seeds. I'm not having as good a luck with pearl milkweed, which is in a slide that's coming up. But I don't know if y'all have seen the purple milkweed vine. I'd never seen one before, but it was growing in our meadow. And so I've gotten seeds from that and spread them around in the meadow to kind of boost those numbers, because it does host the, I found the queen caterpillar on the purple milkweed vine in the past. So here are some other native milkweeds. The Zyzotes there in the bottom right-hand corner, I found that growing we don't own the entire, if you were to come to Blanco and drive past the meadow, we don't own the entire empty lot area. The adjoining neighbor does. And so this Zyzotes is growing on their side, but they've been, she's gone now. Her 3 sons have the house, and everybody's been very kind to let me. You can kind of see the little sticks behind the Zyzotes there so that it doesn't get mowed down. So it's on their side of the land, so I just keep hoping they'll let me keep staking it. Antelope horns, butterfly weed, which is blooming right now. Here's the little green or the pearl milkweed vine, and I'm trying to get some seeds from that because I've had a lot of requests through my blog that people want me to, share some, and I don't mind. But the milkweed bugs are awful this year, and I'm not sure if the seeds that I get are going to be viable. They don't look very healthy. But 2 years ago, we had this really awesome, cool caterpillar. You can see in the picture here, and I guess they were about 3 to 4 inches. They were a bit, sphinx moth. It's a sphinx caterpillar, which is related to the tomato horn caterpillar. So you can kind of imagine how big they were. But I hadn't seen them since. But that was a very interesting caterpillar, and that was the adult sphinx moth that it turns into. Passion flowers, the little one down here, the yellow passion flower, the Passiflora lutea, I found it growing on the other side of the fence, on the canal side. And when Mrs. Canal was still alive, I asked her if I could dig one up and bring it over to our side of the fence, and she said, yeah. And so now we have it growing on our side. It has a very sweet little bloom there. It's about not much bigger than a penny. And that hosts the Gulf fritillary caterpillar. And then we have some other native passion flowers. The birdwing or the batwing is native to our county. I don't know if y'all have that over there in Hayes County. I think the bract passion flower is. I don't think the corksting is, but don't quote me on that. I just enjoy having different species of the same family, and I think that's cool. Like, I don't have any pictures of the tomato, I can't bring up the nightshade. We got a lot of nightshades too. Early on in our native gardening career, one of the first plants we put in was a Flamacanthus, and I don't know, a year or two later, all these caterpillars showed up on a limb or a branch, with the leaves. And I was like, oh, and James was like, oh no. So he cut the branch off and he carried it across the street over to the other vacant lot over there. And then I got to reading up on the internet, come to find out that those were caterpillars of the crimson patch. And it's like, hey, wait a minute, that's what we want, is we want caterpillars, on our plants. That's what we're planting them for. And so the next time, I can't remember if we had another crowd of them show up, but I hadn't seen them since on our Flamacanthus. Now it's like, you would be so welcome. Please come back and eat our Flamacanthus. 1 year, I said, okay, so the sawtooth sunflower, it hosts the bordered patch, which is in the same, genus as the crimson. And so 1 year we had, just a couple of years ago, I think, we had a mass time. They got to stay, nobody died. So, but I happened to see this one little caterpillar on a hook, like right across the walkway. And I was keeping an eye on it, and here's a little video. If this works, it was pretty amazing. You don't have to hear me. It was just pretty cool. I don't know if y'all seen this before, but chrysalis. Wow, amazing. Huh. Wow. I think I'm gonna cry. Oh my goodness. That's easily entertained. You hear a robin in the background.
So now, we'll wait for the butterfly.
Yeah, so I didn't get to see it. I was kind of hanging, you know, hoping I'd get to see the butterfly come out, but I didn't. But that was a pretty cool thing to see. Pretty amazing. Nature's just amazing. So when you plant rue and fennel, then you'll get the giant and the black swallowtail caterpillars. And the giant swallowtail, the white, where the white arrow is, if you touch their head, those little orange things will come out. Can't remember their name. Interesting caterpillar. Oh, and so I got to see the chrysalis. It disappeared, but beautiful chrysalis for that particular butterfly. Wafer ashes, those are host plants for the eastern swallowtail. So there's a little egg, and then the caterpillar, well, with the orange things. And then you can see how it turns into a totally different caterpillar with eyes on it. Pipe vines. Oh, those caterpillars are so cute. We plant a non-native pipe vine, and the caterpillars just eat it up to nothing. And I guess, I don't know what happens after that. And they come back, the plants come back. So we have some of that in the meadow and in the backyard. And then the native pipe vine, the swanflower, have anybody, has y'all ever gotten to see the swanflower pipe vine? I saw that the first time at my uncle's place. He doesn't own it anymore, on the Blanco River in Wimberley. And this was maybe even before I met James in '06. And I thought, man, I took a picture of it and I had no clue what that plant was, the flower, and come to find out it was a swan flower. So we also have the snake root and woolly Dutchman's pipe vine. So nectar plants, Greg's mist flower, which ours is just about finished blooming now. That's a great, especially the monarchs and the queens. They're even coming to like the seed heads right now, the queen butterflies. This one, write this one down if you don't have it, the fragrant mist flower, and I gave the botanical name there, so write it down or take a screenshot, because it's the shrubby version kind of Greg's mist flower, and it's one of the last blooming plants for fall. Like this one blooms September, October. One year it was blooming still at Thanksgiving, because I had pictures of my a friend of mine standing by this particular plant, and it's covered in these blue flowers, and it brings in all kinds of pollinators, not just because I think the monarchs are coming through about that time. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful pollinator plant. And then I also included some other mist flowers too at the bottom. Yellow honeysuckle, which is a, what would you say, a variety or a hybrid, I guess, of the native red honeysuckle. It's a pretty plant. So last year or so, I was on the front porch, because that's where we have our yellow honeysuckle, and I looked down, I saw all this frass and poop on the sidewalk, and it's like, okay, that means there's something in the honeysuckle. And sure enough, I went to looking, and I found numerous snowberry clearwing caterpillars, which is another sphinx. So they get pretty big, and then they turn into this beautiful moth that looks like a bumblebee, kind of flies like a moth, like a hummingbird. I've seen 1 or 2 this summer in the backyard. So beautiful, beautiful moths. The red honeysuckle and trumpet creeper, and I see hummingbirds on the salvies a lot of time, and on the crossvine as well. Have y'all seen the crossvine at the Wildflower Center? It's like got a trunk on it like a tree. It's so huge as you go in through the entrance. It kind of worries me because we have ours on the fence. Extras. So we used to have a purple martin house, and that's another story. And we haven't had anybody in the bat house. My bee nesting box is quite old now. We did have baby eastern screech owls the first year we put up a nesting box, which is pretty amazing. They're on my blog. And I know we still have an owl that probably roosts in it during maybe the winter. So they're still using them. They're just not nesting. Just sad. Oh, and that Cliff Shackelford is the one who makes those owl shacks. He's our state ornithologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Oh, and you can see the squirrels enjoy them as well. And of course, the hummingbird feeders, we put ant moats up, and I guess the titmice and the chickadees think we fill it up with water just for them, because they enjoy them very much. And then suet feeders, didn't really put too much of that out this year. I don't know if y'all want to, this is on my blog as well, if you want to search it. So when I said, the one bird bath in the very beginning, now we have about 20 in the backyard. And one year we had a green heron juvenile that went fishing in that little shallow bird bath. And then another summer we had a wild turkey hen that hung out, flew in the backyard, and walked up and down the paths and got into a bird bath and then left. They're on my bird list, my species list. Okay, now why are you not? Here we go. Oops. Stock tank. We put in a stock tank. That was, I think, in 2012. Pam Pinnock, if anybody's familiar with Pam Pinnock, we went by, she's got directions on her blog how to do this. And then I also put it up on our blog. My blog. And see how beautiful it is right there? Well, and of course I wanted frogs in the pond, but this year, I don't know, we've got these devil frogs that have like torn up. I'm just barely getting the dwarf water lily to survive, and the lemon barcopa. So I don't know, he was digging up the pots of plants and kicking them off the cinder blocks and just causing me all kinds of grief. So hopefully he'll not be so misbehaving. So yes, we took out the Chinese privet that was growing in the front yard, and wax ligustrum, like I said, is growing over on the fence line. They're so big, they have to be taken down by machinery, I think. 1 year, well, in fact, it was 2012 when I was doing my certification for Master Naturalist. We had let these plants grow along the easement in the meadow, because I didn't know. I was waiting to kind of figure out what they were. And Ricky Lennox, if anybody knows Ricky Lennox from up north, he held one up during our training and said, "This is a multi-star thistle and it's invasive." I was like, oh my goodness! I went home that day, and that's what we had. And we spent how many hours pulling that stuff, and I still now and then pull up little bitty ones because I can recognize them. I've got my raptor eyes, and I can see them when they're little tiny rosettes. And I added an arrow so you can see that's Engelmann daisy there, and I think the one underneath it is as well. But the multi-star rosettes are right next to it, and they almost look like the same if you're not sure. So I tried vinegar and treating them with that, but I just pull them as soon as I see them. So we've got them under control, but I feel sorry for people with, bigger, like the ranches and stuff, and this is out of control, like the bastard cabbage too. So, questions? So yes, we do water. Like we just started dragging the hose every other day or so, just on the plants that really need it. James, it looks like he's putting water on the Turk's cap in that photograph, but right now our Turk's cap are doing really well. They don't need water, so we're not putting water on them. So it's just enough water to get them through this, terrible heat up until probably the end of August now. We don't fertilize, don't use any fertilizers. That's a green lynx spider female. Isn't she pretty? On the coneflower. We don't use, pesticides. I don't use pesticides. When James sees like a wasp nest or something, he might spray them. I don't even like to do that because we have summer tanagers that show up and come up and eat the larvae of the wasps. One, I guess a paper slash salvia, and I know I took a picture of it, and a few days later it was gone. So I don't know if the tanagers found it and they just, took care of it. And these are pretty, I thought when we found these eating the velvet leaf mallow, I've never seen a purple insect like that before. And that's what it turns into, is that little fly over there, the sawfly. One year we had these Coreopsis leaf beetles, and they infested the meadow, because that year we had the stiff green thread. It just covered, it was beautiful across the meadow, and these beetles showed up and just decimated them. And I ended up sending a sample to the insect collection there at A&M, and it hadn't happened like that since. Another year we had prairie verbena that grew across the meadow, and it was beautiful, and hadn't done that since. So what about deer? People want to know, do you have deer? Oh, and then I just added that ha 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 just today or yesterday, because this is our front yard here, and so the deer have been increasing over the years in our neighborhood. And so they're really not eating what we have out there. I guess it'd be gone by now. But in the meantime, somebody learned how to jump our chain link fence, which they hadn't done in all these years. But I guess one did, and then another one did. And so just this past week, I guess just last week, James put up another 2 feet above our chain link fence to be deer-proofed. So, yeah, I'd noticed like there were leaves nibbled on the Blanco crabapple blooms, but now I do. So we're hoping this will take care of that. Oh, and the little birds really enjoy, perching on that wire too, we've noticed. They really like it. So, do you mow the meadow? Well, yes, James just mowed it today, and I always put it up on my blog just as a kind of a journal, like when did you mow last year? So I think he mows it in January maybe, and then after everything goes to seed right about now, because then it's also turning very dry, and he worries about grass fires. I know I should too. So they take a lot of time. Yeah. A little, but it's something we enjoy. And now with my iNaturalist, it's like treasure hunting for me. I go out among all those plants, and I'm always looking for something new, a new insect, a new bee. Just the other day, I got a new beetle species that was really like a water species. It's like, what are you doing in our backyard? So, and it's also a way to educate people. I mean, we have hosted master gardeners in our yard and school groups, and I love to share, what I've learned. And so I put up these plant labels. It's getting kind of harder because we're getting more and more plants. But on the back is where I write the date and where the plant came from. So when I'm out in the yard, I can just pick it up. It's like, well, we bought it from, Friendly Natives in 2014 or something like that. And so this is what I use. It's worked the best. This is what's worked the best for me to create signage for the plants in our yard. So just, that's something that interests you. So we're getting close to the end here. I just have some pictures. If you want to come sometime to see our yard, that'd be great. You might want to wait till fall, which I call the second spring, because it is getting a little dry. We do have irises in the front yard. A lot of those were already planted by the previous owners of this home. We're the second family to live here. The house is like 1956 era. So we have red columbines in the front yard, and so the deer don't eat that. And red galania sage, which I think is native to Mexico, but the deer don't eat that. Here's a shot of the front yard, and you can see how large our live oaks are in the front yard, and we also have some wonderful ones in the backyard. So there's some Missouri violet, you know, the red wood sorrel. It's escaping me, the violet. I know that's not native per se. Inland sea oats. I enjoy these 5 bird baths on the right slide here because our bedroom window looks out that way, and there's a hummingbird feeder. So the birds come in the evening and splash and enjoy the water. So that's on the top left is another angle from that corner of the yard. And James made that faux well for me. I guess that was in 2008, out of rocks. There's another shot of the backyard, and Henry and Bonnie in the back. Those are the 2 live oaks. I named them in honor of the couple that lived here before us. They both passed in the house. Flag glass from Arkansas, and that's the eyelash salvia. It's the variety name, and it has a really bright red bloom on it, and it spreads rapidly, and I think it stays green over winter too. And it's really easy to share with friends. You just pull it up and hand it to them. So we designed this new garden area I guess in 2014. And so this is closer to what it looks like now. This was taken 4 years ago. So there's my used to be Purple Martin house, and here's some more shots of the meadow. And that picnic table is now in the meadow, not in the backyard. That was built by Mr. Bindley's ag class, the former owner, the owner of this home. James did that fence. And here's James' picture. I thought that was a really nice picture that he did. That was kind of, well, I don't think the meadow before he mowed it today was full of Indian blankets that were going to seed. Here's his little gate that he made. Oh, that's kind of what it looks like now after a mow. So we've got a full half of a city block, basically, here in Blanco. So just to give you an idea, I think it's about an acre total. So that was last year. We're getting more and more bluebonnets every year. I try to spread the seeds. So, yep, all kinds of interesting critters. Y'all have to look up my essay that was in Texas Co-op Power this past year on Lazarus. He drowned a couple of times, but he came back. And so, like the bottom picture, when I took a picture of that critter, I thought ants. You know, that's what it looked like to me, but nope. It's a broad-headed bug nymph, so it's like a juvenile bug. So one of the early things I learned. Oh, so I have to tell you this. I don't have a video, but last year, September, I was in the backyard, and I guess I had my phone in one hand, and I had this spider. I was trying to, I don't remember what I was doing with it. It was in the palm of my hand, and then all of a sudden, the spider wasp shows up in my hand. I mean, and stings the spider, you know, paralyzes it, and was, you know, all over. This is all going on in the palm of my hand, and I'm taking pictures, and I was like, oh my goodness, and then pew, the wasp flew off with the spider, and I knew what was going to happen. She stung the spider, paralyzed the spider, and she's carrying the spider back to her burrow, because then she was going to lay eggs in that poor paralyzed spider, and then the larva would eat the spider. But it all happened in my hand. It's crazy. So this is another story, but 2018 I found an uncommon crest-ribbed morning glory here in Blanco. And so if you want to know more about that, I did an article for Wildflower magazine that came out last year, and it's available online. But it was pretty cool, because it really led me on this whole adventure that ended up going to get to tour the herbarium there at UT and met Mr. George. I can't say his last name for the life of me, but he's the curator and he's a very interesting person. And so it was just a really cool thing, just because I found this, uncommon plant. And so we were on Central Texas Gardener in 2016. And when they came to do the interview, it was in 2015. And that was, I can't remember if it was before, I think it might have been before the flood, the big flood. And we had a storm that was coming through. I think we were under a tornado warning. And so when they do it, if you were to watch this and you saw our interview, where they're talking to us in our dining room because it was starting to rain. Because normally they like to interview people outside, but we had to come in. But we got the interview done. So that was fun. And then Miss Daphne, she featured a photograph of mine, the Mexican honey wasp, just this past year. So that was cool. And then Lynn, yes, there's my article. What was really cool is in my backyard, because that's my photograph. And it just was such a wonderful thing for me, because for one thing, I've written for this magazine since 1989, I think. And I'd never had a photograph on the cover. So this is my first and probably only cover photograph. And it was my Argiope, which I love spiders. And then they did in my backyard, the Charlotte's Web effect. And so this new book project that I'm working on for kids, it was cool because one of the characters is a direct descendant of Charlotte. So it just, I don't know, it's a God thing, I guess. So who knew? So there I am with my brother. They're on Dogwood Street in Corpus Christi with the pittosporums and the Chinese tallow there. So there's the year that we had the wonderful stiff green thread in the meadow. It was so beautiful. And my hardworking husband, who does so much for the yard, the two of us. So I think that's my grand finale. So now we get to do questions.
Just to let everybody know, I couldn't recall if Lynn might have mentioned this at the beginning. If you guys want to submit a question to the chat box, we have one question out there right now. If everybody knows where the chat is, you can hover over your Zoom screen. It's down in the bottom, in the middle, and it says chat. If you click on that, you will be able to type a question in. And currently we have one question from Tracy Mock that says, do you have water flowing into the stock tank, or do you add to it with the hose periodically?
We add it, and I'm trying to unshare my screen. I thought I did. What are you seeing from me?
We don't, you have unshared your screen, Sheryl, and we have you, or I have you, in the speaker view.
Okay, good. There I am. Okay. Pretty much every day, but I don't, we don't have any kind of filtering or bubbling system or anything like that.
And we have another question from Kim. Who did you say did your owl boxes?
Oh, if you go to owlshack.com, and Cliff Shackelford is his name, but he's got a website. It's just owlshack.com.
Great. And Nancy has a question. What do you do about mosquitoes in the tank?
Oh, Gambusha. That's we have minnows. They call them Gambusha. Little, the little kind of guppy looking, but they're minnows. We have mosquito problems more probably from our bird bath. So we try to dump those out, every couple of days. So, but yeah, that mosquitoes, ugh.
And from Sue, what is your biggest challenge?
Summer heat. Yeah, I would say that's the biggest one, is just trying to get through these days when it's so hot and the plants are so stressed. So, and then, you know, it's a lot of work, I guess, in the early spring, going out there and cutting things that are dead, you know, pruning to the ground or cutting back dead limbs. But it's kind of therapy too. I mean, I enjoy it because then I'm always looking out for, you know, a new insect or something new that I hadn't seen before. So.
And Laura had a question about mosquitoes. She just wondered if you had problems with mosquitoes. I think you probably answered that question, but you might have any more advice on that.
We have a fountain. It's like a bird bath. It has this fountain thing, you know, through the middle of it. And so when it's not running, because I think when it's running and the water's moving, I could be wrong, then the mosquitoes aren't attracted to it. But when it's still, they are. So I did buy some of those mosquito bits, kind of like they call them mosquito dunks, that they have some little bits that you can put into the water. And so I do use those. Right now we don't have water in it because we're just trying to discourage mosquitoes.
Yes, and Chris had a similar question about how do you keep them out of your stock pond. I think you've answered that question too.
Yeah, no problem.
Sarah has a question. Do you sow the meadow or did it come in on its own?
A little bit of both through the years, because we did have a whole lot of, isn't it called black medic, the like the clover with the little yellow flowers on it. We had a lot of that in Corpus Christi, and we had a whole lot of that, and now not so much. So we have, in the spring, we have bluebonnets, but not across the whole meadow. I did go out and collect some bluebonnet seeds on some property that still hasn't sold off the highway down near Sonic. That was a couple of years ago, just to kind of boost our numbers. And here and there, I've thrown out seed. One of the things I try to do as well is to preserve, which I kind of touched on with the passion flower on the neighbor side. I try to, if there's a native in the neighborhood, I try to get some seed or to bring it to our property to protect it. 4 o'clock, there's a native 4 o'clock that was growing over in the drainage ditch on the west side of our property. And I guess I brought some over because anyway, it's doing real well. It's like reseeded and it's a pretty little plant. So those are, they spread themselves. But back to the meadow, just here and there, like right now, some seeds off of the skeleton plants. We have Texas skeleton plants, so I went ahead and threw some in the meadow. We have golden dahlia that we bought, and it's about to go seed, and I know that it is a Blanco County native, and so I'll throw that out there. Some prairie fleabane seeds. Oh, wine cup. The blue curls. So yes, nature's done some, and then I've thrown some out as well, but kind of letting nature do it, in addition to what already's out there growing as well. And Mormon tea, isn't that a native? Oh, and noseburn. Have y'all met noseburn yet? Yeah, you need to meet one. It's a native plant, and I think it hosts the admiral butterfly, but if you touch it, it burns for a little while. I let it grow in the backyard as well, and I gave it a tag too. Like it says ouch. It says the common name and then parentheses ouch, so people know.
All right, Emily has a question. It says, when you found some of your more obscure plant species, how many do you plant at a time?
What was the other part of it?
Do I need to repeat it? When you've found some of your more obscure plant species, how many do you plant at a time?
I don't quite, like when I found that Edwards Plateau crested morning glory, it was on church property on Main Street, and the church approved. They, you know, behind. In fact, the assistant minister helping. I took seeds from that plant and I just dropped them in a bed in the backyard. And so I don't really, if we transplant something, James found a mallow growing in the lot across the street. I think it's a globe. It's a globe mallow with the orange flower, because we have one with the pink flower that came from property in eastern Blanco County. But he took one and it's in the backyard. I don't know if I'm answering the question. But I know that I'm getting...
Well, if there's another question, Emily, that you have, follow on, let us know. She said thanks to everyone, so I think you got it. And then Rick wants to know, do you have much light around the owl box?
It's in the motte of live oak trees in the meadow. So, and when you go to Cliff's website, he will give you tips and suggestions for placing one, like the direction and how high up. And I think usually they probably will be kind of shaded because they'll be hopefully in a tree, which is what I think an owl would prefer. So I would suggest checking his website for more information about where to place one.
Okay. Rachel wants to know, do you have issues with hackberry, cedar elm, or ligustrum saplings sprouting up around the garden?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. In fact, we had a couple this morning that came to see the yard from Canyon Lake. And I'm looking out the window because I know where I was. I was talking to him, Tom, and I said, oh, there's a wax ligustrum right there. It's in the middle of the, almost in the middle of some Turk's cap. And it was, again, it was good sized. And thank goodness, wax ligustrums are very easy to pull up. Hackberries, unless they're, seedlings, if they've already put in roots, those are a real challenge, but I know where some are right now that need to be dug up. And pecans, because there's a pecan tree in our neighborhood and the squirrels come over and they plant them in our yard. And those are really hard to dig up. So yeah, wax ligustrums, they don't bother me because I can yank them right up. And, sometimes there's quite a few in one place. And then wax ligustrums, cedar elms, one or two maybe, but not, and we don't even have one growing in our yard, which I don't know, should we? Because we've got persimmon, and I didn't even touch on that in the presentation because we've planted rusty blackhaw and the escarpment cherry tree, Mexican plum, Mexican buckeye, Texas buckeye, the persimmon tree, Inaqua, but we don't have a cedar elm. Should we? Or I guess that would create more problems with more little cedar elms. Y'all can let me know.
And Molly has a question. Did you battle much against invasive winter type weeds or grass burrs?
I guess the grass burrs, this one, hedge parsley and knotted hedge parsley. Oh my goodness, I have shoulder problems now because the hedge parsley, or if y'all are familiar with that, that was in the carrot family. And I was trying to make a dent in them in the meadow because they are, as far as I know, not from here. They're naturalized, I guess. And they're really pretty when they're flowering, but when they go to seed, they're awful. And so I pulled so many that I now have a bad shoulder. And so I can't pull them anymore, I guess. But those are the ones that really get me. I do not like those. The knotted hedge parsley have a really mean seed head on them and not even a very pretty flower. Like I said, the black medic, the clover, it dies off pretty quickly and it's not so much an issue now. Some of the other ones, I guess those are the main ones that I pull. Yeah, there's some that are, I guess, would be natives, but they're just kind of weedy. So sometimes I let them stay and sometimes I don't.
Okay.
Did that answer?
We have, I think so. We have one more question from Kim, kind of a follow-up to the wildflowers. When you seed wildflowers, do you just scatter them or do you prepare the seed bed like in your meadow?
I don't do any preparation. I tend to go with nature, like the bluebonnets throw their seeds out whenever they go to seed. So that's when I throw out seed. And the antelope horn, you know, they just popped open a few weeks ago. So I should probably go out there now and throw some more antelope horn seeds since it's mowed. So I just kind of, whatever nature, how nature, the timing of nature is kind of what I follow. So I don't do any prep work.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Just asking if anyone has any last questions that you'd like to bring up. Now would be a good time to do that. And while we're waiting on that, Lynn, I'll turn it back to you as well. I think we've got,
Okay.
go ahead, Lynn.
This is such a timely topic. I don't know about y'all, but I've had more time to spend in the yard these past few months. I think that's probably true for everybody. I would suggest that you look at Sheryl's blog. If you Google Sheryl Smith Rodgers, one of the, or maybe Sheryl, you could give us the URL of that, but her blog is arranged by year, and I looked at 2011, the year of the major drought. I looked at August and saw the same spot in her yard and then compared it to today, this year, and it's a pretty good contrast. So you will enjoy looking at that. I'm really pleased that we had so many people register and show up to join us for this Zoom. I hope you all liked it as much as I did. Thanks to Chris for hosting and Betsy for facilitating. She saved us on this one. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Lynn.
try
There's
to
one
put up-
more question, and I don't want to leave it out because it's a really interesting question, and I want to ask it as one last one for the group. Sheryl, have you noticed fewer butterflies this year? Emily says, across the country, there's a lot of reports of reduced populations. And are you seeing the same thing?
You know, I don't think I've noticed enough to say I've noticed, if that makes sense. It's what I've felt like is we don't have as many hummingbirds, because I only have three feeders up, and I usually put up a few more. But it seems like we don't have as many of them. Right now, I've been seeing a lot of queens, butterflies. I'll have to pay more attention to see, but I hadn't noticed that very much.
And Emily said that she's in Austin and she's seen your hummers there as well. So,
Yeah.
all right, Lynn, thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Lynn. I think that's a wrap up on questions. And thank you, Sheryl.
And thanks, Tanya, for the great emails. That's all we've got. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.